Well, as we've just heard from the palace in the last few moments, King Charles has confirmed that he has a form of cancer. We don't know a great deal more right now, but he's just left hospital following a prostate operation. If, in the King's case, it hasn't spread, there's no reason to think his reign will be short or that some kind of regency arrangement will be needed. But it's interesting that the King has chosen to be so open. In his statement, he says, His Majesty has chosen to share his diagnosis to prevent speculation and in the hope it may assist public understanding for all those around the world who are affected by cancer. And that is kind of characteristic of the man. I want to go first to LBC's Fraser Knight, who's at the palace right now. Fraser, what more can you tell us?
Andrew, Buckingham Palace says it was during that treatment for King Charles's enlarged prostate that a separate issue of concern was identified by the medical teams. And they've said that diagnostic tests have now identified that as being a form of cancer. They've said His Majesty has started a schedule of regular treatment during which he's been advised by doctors that he needs to postpone his public-facing duties. Of course, he walked out of the London clinic last Monday after spending 3 nights in hospital there. He underwent the treatment some 10 days ago for that enlarged prostate and was looking quite chirpy. He smiled as he walked out. He waved to the cameras while he was with his wife, Queen Camilla. And in recent days, she has even said that he was doing well. He was doing his best in his recovery for that. But now Buckingham Palace saying this other issue, he has now been diagnosed with cancer and has said that he remains wholly positive about his treatment and looks forward to returning to full public duty as soon as possible.
Fraser, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's go to the LBC royal correspondent, Peter Hunt, a veteran observer of these things. Peter, this is a communication the like of which we haven't really seen before, such a senior member of the royal family being so open about cancer.
Yes, he's definitely being open, but I think we need to be mindful of the fact that when it comes to the royals and health, they share a truth with us, but obviously because of privacy matters, never the whole truth. So what's clear from what we've been hearing in the last few minutes is we don't yet know the form of the cancer. We know it is a form of cancer, but we don't know what type, and we've heard talk of a course of regular treatment, but we don't know what treatment he is receiving.
Indeed.
They've clearly decided that that is in his interests for it not to be disclosed. But as you were saying in your question, he has received much credit for being open about having the treatment for his prostate. And indeed, the NHS was talking about how, as a result of him talking about his enlarged prostate, there was sort of visits of 1 every 5 seconds to the relevant NHS page on the NHS website.
Well, indeed, I was talking to my GP just earlier last week, and she was saying that since his announcement about his prostate operation, there's been a huge spike in people coming into her surgery with the same kind of problem. So he does have an effect on day-to-day life outside this. But it's also interesting, Peter, that, I mean, he is, by and large, seen as a rather pessimistic man, but when it comes to health matters and his own position, he's relentlessly optimistic. The statement says that he remains wholly positive about his treatment and looks forward to returning to full public duty as soon as possible. But given that it's cancer and given the kind of treatments that you have for cancer, that might not be for some time.
And that represents a challenge for the British royal family because they are, down on numbers of people who can go out and do engagements, because you now have the King who, while stressing in his statement that he will undertake state business and official paperwork, he won't do what we are used to seeing the royals doing, which is out and about. His late mother always used to argue that they had to be seen to be believed.
To be believed,
he is off.
Yes.
He is off the pitch, so to speak. So too is the Princess of Wales, Kate. And so that will place an even greater expectation on the Prince of Wales, on William, to be out and about and filling some of these gaps. And I suspect it is no coincidence that in advance of receiving this update on the King's health, there was always also an announcement that William will be returning to public duties. He'd stopped doing them for a period of time after Kate's operation, but he'll be back out and about from Wednesday.
It's the kind of news that nobody wants to hear. Just reflect a little bit for us, Peter, on the man himself, because he's always had a bit of a melancholy streak, and yet alongside that there has always been a certain amount of stoicism.
And a great sense of the absurd. I mean, he has in part managed to survive all those many, many, many years of waiting. I mean, one cannot imagine what it must be like to not be able to fulfill your destiny until someone very close and dear to you dies, which is what was his case for so many decades of his life. And he managed that by having this profound sense of the absurd and a belief in trying to do things that he knew he wouldn't be able to do once he was crowned. And that's why we saw him passionate on issues like the environment and other such matters. Now he has been king. Now he has been on the throne for 17 months. And the key thing he has done, as he promised he would do, I remember talking to you, Andrew, on the day, around the day of the death of Queen Elizabeth II, when he gave his speech on television. And in that speech, he promised to follow in her footsteps. He promised, in essence, he didn't use these words, but he basically promised not to meddle, and that he has kept that promise during his reign thus far.
So far, so good. And in terms of the practical things that he can and cannot do while having treatment, an awful lot of the job, of course, involves sitting at a desk, reading mounds and mounds of paperwork, signing, reading memos from senior politicians, being aware of what ambassadors and so forth around the world are sending back to London. All of that, I would imagine, would carry on. It's the public-facing duties, standing in the rain under an umbrella, shaking lots of hands. That's the kind of thing we won't see much of.
Yes, I mean, the statement is making clear that he will continue, as you say, the state business and the official paperwork. One assumes, but of course there's no confirmation of this, that he could continue to see the Prime Minister at their weekly audiences if he's well enough to do that. So I think anything that is in private, in a palace or one of his houses, he can carry on and do. But what is definitely not going to be happening for, as yet, an unspecified period of time are the public appearances by the king.
And you say unspecified, and if it's chemotherapy, if it's radiotherapy, that could be quite a long time, could it not? It could be sort of many, many months.
And that is, I mean, I've learned, the one thing I have learned when you said right at the start how many years I've been doing this, is the one thing I've learned is to really avoid speculation when it comes to health and the royals.
Very, very wise indeed. Royal correspondent Peter Hunt, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's turn to LBC's political editor, Natasha Clark. Now, whenever it comes to a major announcement like this from Buckingham Palace, there's always a question about what does it mean for the Constitution? Does it mean we're going to head towards some kind of Second Regency Act? And the answer to that is probably no. What are you hearing from Downing Street?
Well, it sounds like tonight, obviously, the Buckingham Palace have obviously very much led on the communications on this, but obviously Downing Street will have been very well kept informed of this latest developments. I think what's unclear at the moment is whether, the King will continue to have his weekly audience with the Prime Minister, because obviously that's the most, direct contact that the pair have.
That is the critical heart of the system, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, and obviously it's not a public-facing duty, so therefore, according to that statement, it would not therefore be postponed. So we can only assume that those will continue. And obviously, if the King is still well enough to undertake state business and official paperwork as usual, I would assume that work will continue. But we will be seeing, obviously, much less of the King in the weeks to come, like you say. But it very much, from all the things that we know about Charles III, he obviously is going to be very keen to continue to do all of his duties behind the scenes and still very much form a part of public life. But I think for what it will mean for the royal family is perhaps the bigger question, and what it will mean for the succession and for the general forward-facingness of the family, who, like our correspondent just said, we're sort of running out of roles in terms of
that is a big issue because in a sense, if you look at the front pages, if you look at the publicity the royal family generates day to day, week to week, then it's Kate has been a massive part of that. She's on more front pages, as many front pages almost as Diana was back in the day.
But Charles wanted
and she's out of that now.
Yeah, Charles wanted a slimmed down monarchy. You'll remember just a few years ago that was part of his plans for the continuation of the royal family. But if they can't go out to make these public appearances to be seen to be believed and to make the case for their very existence in the public eye, then I think it's going to be very much a problem of communications and of delivery for the royal family going forward.
Yes, we don't know much more about Kate's condition at the moment, except that she is in recovery. And I think they've said that we're not expecting to see her in public until Easter at the earliest. Yes,
I think that's right. So yes, obviously, Kate was stepping into quite a big role. And obviously the departure of Meghan and Harry from the royal family has meant that the William and Kate have had to step up to their royal duties more. And like you say, going back to the point that you made earlier about sort of the King wanting to end this speculation and sort of get all of this information out in the public domain to try and avoid people talking about this. And it's revealed tonight that prostate prostate cancer, despite he was in hospital for benign prostate enlargement. Apparently, the Palace of Tonight ruled out that it is prostate cancer. Now, we don't know what the stage of the cancer is. We don't know what we don't know whereabouts it is in the body, or how serious it is. But there will be questions tonight about how serious the king is, and whether how they can continue with undertaking his state business and official paperwork as usual, and how long that arrangement may be able to continue to be in place for.